Hey guys, it's Chloe. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I last posted anything. Things got pretty busy, so yeah, I just didn't have time to film or edit or upload anything new. So today I'm going to be doing a quick review of Korean for Beginners. This is the first book I ever got for studying Korean, and that was a few years ago. I think maybe 3 years ago now I got this book, and I still have it and I still use it. Overall, I think it is a really good book. Even if you're past the beginner stage, it's really good to have as a reference, I think. And even though there is a series, Tuttle has like a little series for beginners. They have Korean for beginners, Chinese for beginners and Japanese for beginners. I will be doing a review of Chinese for beginners as well, but they are different. So yeah, if you're looking to get one of the other books in this little beginners series, then yeah, they're not the same as this book, so just be aware of that, because that's what I thought they'd all be the same layout, which is why I got the Chinese one and it was not the same. So yeah, I will cover all of that in the review for Chinese for beginners. So for now, let's just get into the review for this one. So one of the positives of this book is the layout, in my opinion. I think the way the chapters are ordered is really good, because what it does, the very first chapter, it just kind of gives you a brief introduction to the language, so it doesn't teach you anything about the language itself, it just tells you a little bit about it, where it came from, stuff like that, like how it developed. And then it gets into teaching you Hangul, and it also comes with a CD, and it has videos to help you pronounce each of the characters, which I think is really good, because it can be very difficult for learners to pronounce Korean. I know I definitely struggle with it. So it has a whole chapter just for particles, lesson or chapter 5. You can see I've kind of written in things, I've got all these tabs because I still flip back through this book. So I think it's really useful because it kind of gives you what you need to know, so you can kind of do it yourself, if that makes sense. So it gives you a load of particles and what they're used for, all in one chapter. And then it goes into different conjugation patterns, and again tells you how to make them, what they're used for, things like that, so you can kind of string sentences together yourself without being spoon-fed the information and the structures. So I think that's good because it kind of makes you use it rather than just trying to memorise specific set structures and then not really kind of understanding how to put sentences together yourself. Another positive in this book, I think, is that there are a lot of example sentences. So pretty much every point it makes, it will have an example sentence. Like just as I'm flicking through, you can see all the different example sentences, and they all have audio for the example sentences. It's on the CD with all the pronunciation videos as well from the Hangul lessons. So that's really good, because it frustrates me when textbooks have all these sentences and passages and dialogues but no CD, because I think listening is one of the most important things when learning. Well, I mean, obviously everything's important, but especially with Korean, it's quite difficult for learners to listen to. At least in my experience, like compared to Japanese is a lot easier to understand when listening, in my opinion. So when Korean textbooks and things don't have any audio, that's definitely a big drawback. But this one has plenty of audio, plenty of listening, plenty of example sentences, all that good stuff. So another thing that's really good about this book is the different, I guess, cultural notes. At the end of every chapter, there is something either about the language or about the culture, so it just gives you a little bit of extra insight. I think things like this are really vital when studying languages in general, because if you don't learn about the culture and understand the culture, then that can hinder your language learning, I think. Especially with this, like this particular passage talks about Korean names and how the family name goes first and stuff like that. So if you don't know things like this, then it will make learning the language a lot harder. Another big positive is all the vocab. So again, in every chapter there is a big vocab list, and at the back as well it has the glossary. So there's English to Korean and Korean to English. So yeah, it just gives you a really good base knowledge of Korean words. Again, so you can kind of fill in the gaps and make your sentences using the grammar it's teaching. So I think together with the way it teaches grammar and the different vocab lists it has, it works really well together in my opinion. So another thing, I kind of briefly touched on this in the layout point I was making, but it teaches everything from the beginning, from the very beginning. So even before you get to the actual language, it teaches you about the history of Korean, then it teaches you Hangul from the get-go. So before you do anything else, it teaches you the writing system, which is really important because there are some textbooks either don't teach you Hangul, they kind of assume you know it already, or they don't use Hangul, they use romanization, or they kind of teach you Hangul as you go. But I think it's really important to know it before you start learning grammar or vocab or anything like that. I think it will just really benefit learners in the long term if you know from the beginning how to read and how to write and how to speak Korean and Hangul. So another thing I like about this book is that the chapters are quite short. So this is just one. That was one chapter. 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Most of them are just they're short chapters, which makes things a lot easier. Okay, this is quite a long chapter, but that's all for the particles. I think it's a lot easier when the chapters are broken down into smaller chunks. It makes it easier to remember the information in each chapter and you're not kind of overwhelmed with information. Like I know I'm using elementary Korean at the moment and those chapters are quite long. So depending on your learning style and kind of how much you want to get done in each study session, I think having the shorter chapters kind of dedicated to one thing is really good because it means you can kind of focus on that one topic, that one part of the language rather than having to learn 3 new particles and 3 different verb endings and kind of getting weighed down with all the information. And in the later lessons it kind of uses what was introduced in the earlier lessons, so the particles and the conjugations and things like that, and kind of goes into each one in more detail. Also it's written quite casually. I know some textbooks can get really dull, honestly, and you kind of read a page and then you're not sure what it's actually saying because you zoned out. But this is written in a really friendly way. So it's kind of like your friends explaining it to you rather than you're in like a classroom trying to learn it. So it's much more engaging than other textbooks that I have used in the past, I think. Okay, the last big thing that I really like about this book is just the amount that it covers. It's not a very big book, it's quite... like for a text, well, I guess, I don't know if it's a textbook, but for a language book, it's only 159 pages, so compared to other books that's not very big, but it covers so much. So this can give you a really solid basis for learning Korean. Like even there's 27 chapters in total, and it goes through, you know, different particles, different conjugations and tenses, give you so much vocabulary. So yeah, as a starting point, as a first textbook, this is probably the best one I have used. I haven't used that many books for Korean, to be fair. I used a lot more when I started Japanese, but like I can't express enough how much I love this book. Like it's been so helpful the last 3 years that I've had it. Like even now I've kind of moved past this point, I still go back and look through things, and especially for review and stuff like that, because all the particles and the conjugations are together in one place. It's really good to just kind of flip back and refresh your memory. But it's not all good things, unfortunately. There are some drawbacks to this book. The main one, in my opinion, is that there are no dialogues, even in the later lessons. So there are the example sentences, but there's no conversations or reading practices or anything like that. Another drawback is that there are no exercises in this book. Again, it's quite easy to use the information to make your own sentences and things like that as practice, but there's no exercises, no like fill in the blanks or conjugate this verb correctly or anything like that. Another drawback I would say, from when I was very first starting out, is that the explanations for the conjugations can be a little bit confusing, I think. Like since I've been learning for a bit longer now and going back, I can understand what it's saying, but when I first started I really struggled to make any sense of it. So yeah, if you're a complete beginner and this is your first and only Korean textbook, I'd recommend finding something maybe online that explains the conjugations to kind of get another explanation for it, just in case you do struggle to understand what it's saying. Another drawback, in my opinion, is that there is no grammar glossary. There is a table of grammar terms in the back, and as I said earlier, there's the vocabulary glossaries. But if you're looking for a specific grammar point that's covered in the book, you'll have to just either flick through the book or go to the contents and try and find it in the contents. This isn't a major issue, but if there's something specific I'm looking for, I want to be able to find it quickly. So I have tabbed like the particles chapter and the conjugation chapter, but if there was a certain point I was looking for, like with the tenses and things like that, there's no kind of quick way, I guess, to find it. You have to go back to the contents and look through and find the page and then do it that way instead of just looking for the point itself in the glossary. But yeah, that's the end of my thoughts on this book. As I said at the beginning, overall I really love this book, and if you're completely new to Korean, I would definitely recommend this book first before you look at any other textbooks. I would highly recommend this one. As I said, there's no dialogues or exercises, but I think it's giving you such a solid base of the language. So if you then did get a different textbook or workbook or anything like that, you can build on what you know already. I will leave a link in the description where you can buy this book on Amazon. I'll also link to the page on Tuttle as well. As I said at the beginning, I'll also be doing a review of Chinese for beginners. I don't actually own Japanese for beginners, but if people really wanted to see a review of that, I would consider buying that as well, and then maybe doing a giveaway or something. So yeah, let me know if you want to see a review of the Japanese for beginners as well, and I'll see what I can do about that. So that's it for this video. I will hopefully continue to be posting fairly regularly, and I won't go missing for another 3 months, but we'll see how it goes. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.